Your leadership style is destroying your company, and you don't even know it. But what if a Roman emperor who died 1800 years ago already solved your biggest problem? Listen, I know you didn't wake up this morning planning to fail as a leader. Nobody does. But here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to tell you. The leadership model you're using right now, the one they taught you in business school, the one you copied from that famous CEO, the one plastered all over LinkedIn, it's completely broken. And before you close this video thinking, not another leadership guru telling me to meditate and be zen, hold on. Because what I'm about to share with you isn't some fluffy self-help nonsense. It's a battle-tested framework used by one of the most powerful men in history who managed to lead an empire through plague, war, economic collapse, and betrayal. His name was Marcus Aurelius, and he was dealing with problems that would make your worst Monday look like a vacation. Now, I'm going to reveal something at the end of this video that most leadership experts will never tell you. A counterintuitive principle that will completely change how you see your role as a leader. But first, you need to understand why you're struggling in the first place. Let me paint you a picture. It's 2 a.m. and you're staring at your laptop screen. Your inbox has 247 unread messages. Your team is burned out. Your best employee just quit. Your investors are breathing down your neck asking why growth isn't faster. Your competitors just launched something better. And your spouse barely recognizes you anymore because you're always at work, even when you're home. Sound familiar? Here's what's actually happening. You're drowning in a leadership model designed for a world that no longer exists. Traditional leadership was built on stability, predictability, and control. But look around you. The market changes every 3 months. Technology that took decades to develop 10 years ago now becomes obsolete in 18 months. Your team has access to more information in their pocket than entire corporations had 20 years ago. And you're expected to have all the answers, make perfect decisions instantly, project unwavering confidence, never show weakness, and somehow balance short-term profits with long-term vision while keeping everyone happy. It's impossible, and it's crushing you. Let me tell you about Sarah Mitchell, a founder I met last year. She built a tech startup from nothing, bootstrapped it to $5 million in revenue with a team of 30 people. On paper, she was winning, but behind the scenes, she was imploding. Every decision felt like life or death. When a major client threatened to leave, her immediate reaction was panic, fire someone, slash braces, make desperate promises she couldn't keep. When her CTO disagreed with her in a meeting, her gut instinct was to assert dominance, to remind everyone who's in charge. When a product launch failed, she wanted to work 80-hour weeks and force her team to do the same until they fixed it. Sarah was operating from a place of pure reaction, fear-based, control-obsessed, and it was killing her company culture from the inside out. But here's where it gets interesting. Sarah discovered something that changed everything. Not a new management framework, not another productivity hack. She discovered Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, the private journal of a man who ruled the Roman Empire while it was literally falling apart. Now, you might be thinking, what does a Roman emperor have to do with my startup? Everything. Because Marcus Aurelius wasn't just dealing with business problems. He was managing an empire during one of history's darkest periods. Imagine this, a plague that killed millions of your citizens, multiple wars on your borders, floods destroying your infrastructure, conspiracies and betrayals from your own inner circle, economic collapse. And, oh, by the way, you didn't choose any of this. The job was forced on you. Marcus Aurelius didn't want to be emperor. He wanted to be a philosopher. But duty called, and he had to lead through absolute chaos. And here's the plot twist nobody tells you about Stoicism. It wasn't created by privileged philosophers sitting in comfortable rooms theorizing about life. It was forged in the fire of real leadership challenges, real crises, real pressure. So, what is Stoicism actually about? And listen carefully here, because this is where most people get it completely wrong. Stoicism is not about suppressing your emotions, being a cold, robotic leader, not caring about anything, passive acceptance of terrible situations. Stoicism is about radical clarity in chaos. It's about distinguishing between what you can control and what you can't, so you stop wasting energy on the wrong battles. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Think about your typical day as a leader. How much time do you spend worrying about what competitors are doing, what the market might do, what people think about you, whether that investor will say yes, whether the economy will crash? All things outside your control. Now, how much time do you spend on what you can control? Your responses, your decisions, your character, your effort, your standards, the culture you create through your daily actions. This is the Stoic distinction, and it's the difference between leaders who crumble under pressure and leaders who thrive in chaos. Let me tell you about James Chen. He runs a manufacturing company with 150 employees. Last year, his biggest suppliers suddenly went bankrupt, threatening to shut down his entire production line. His first instinct? Rage, blame, desperation. He wanted to sue someone, to find who was responsible, to somehow force the situation to reverse itself. He spent 3 days barely sleeping, calling lawyers, yelling at his operations team, spiraling into what-if scenarios about bankruptcy. Then his mentor asked him one simple question: what can you actually control right now? James stopped. He made a list. He could control reaching out to alternative suppliers immediately. He could control transparent communication with his clients about delays. He could control how he showed up for his anxious team. He could control his own response and whether he led with panic or clarity. Within 48 hours of shifting his focus to what he could control, James had secured temporary suppliers, renegotiated timelines with understanding clients, and his team rallied together because they saw their leader being honest and strategic instead of chaotic. 6 months later, James told me that supplier bankruptcy was the best thing that ever happened to his company. Why? Because it forced him to diversify, to build resilience into his supply chain, and to develop a leadership approach based on control over his responses rather than trying to control everything around him. Now, here's where Stoicism gets really practical for business leaders. The Stoics practiced something called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. And before you think this sounds dark and pessimistic, listen to how powerful this is. It means deliberately imagining what could go wrong so you're mentally and strategically prepared when it does. Marcus Aurelius would start each day by telling himself, "Today I will meet interference, ingratitude, violence, treachery, slander, selfishness, all caused by people who don't know good from bad." Was he being pessimistic? No, he was being realistic. He was preparing his mind so that when these things happened, and they did happen constantly, he wasn't shocked, reactive, or thrown off balance. Maria Rodriguez founded a software company that was growing fast, too fast. Everything was going perfectly, until it wasn't. One morning, she discovered that her co-founder had been embezzling funds for 8 months. $300,000 gone. Trust shattered. The company nearly destroyed. Her immediate emotional reaction was pure devastation, betrayal, anger. She wanted to shut everything down, to quit, to give up on entrepreneurship entirely. But here's what saved her. 6 months earlier, Maria had started a daily practice inspired by Stoic philosophy. Every morning, she spent 10 minutes imagining potential challenges and how she'd respond to them. She'd asked herself, what if a key person betrays me? What if we lose our biggest client? What if funding falls through?
This wasn't pessimism, it was preparation. So when the actual crisis hit, something interesting happened. While part of her was devastated, another part of her brain activated immediately. I've already thought about this scenario. I know what to do. Within 72 hours, Maria had secured emergency bridge funding from existing investors, been completely transparent with her team and rallied them around survival, implemented new financial controls and oversight, pressed charges while maintaining her composure.
Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds like always expecting the worst. Won't this make me anxious and negative? Here's the paradox. Preparing for adversity actually reduces anxiety. Think about it. What makes you more anxious? Avoiding thinking about potential problems until they explode in your face? Or calmly considering them in advance so you have a plan? The Stoics understood that uncertainty and lack of preparation create anxiety. Mental rehearsal creates confidence. But here's where Stoicism goes from good to extraordinary. There's a concept called amor fati, love of fate. And this is going to sound crazy at first, but stick with me. It means not just accepting what happens to you, but actively loving it. Finding the opportunity in the obstacle. Choosing to see setbacks as setups for something better. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This isn't toxic positivity. This isn't just think happy thoughts. This is a radical reframe that transforms how you experience leadership pressure. David Thompson spent 18 months developing what he believed would be his company's breakthrough product. He invested $2 million, hired new team members, pre-sold to clients based on promises. Launch day came. The product was a disaster. Bugs everywhere. Clients were furious. His team was demoralized. 2 key employees quit immediately. David's first reaction was to see this as a catastrophic failure, a waste of time and money, proof that he wasn't cut out for this. He wanted to hide, to make excuses, to blame his development team for not executing properly. But David had been studying Stoic philosophy for 2 years. He had trained himself to ask a different question when things went wrong. How is this actually perfect? So he forced himself to find the perfection in this disaster. The product failure revealed fundamental flaws in his development process that would have cost millions more if they'd scaled. The clients who left were never going to be loyal long-term partners anyway. The employees who quit weren't aligned with the company's values. The crisis unified his remaining team around radical honesty and better standards. He learned more about resilient leadership in 2 months than he had in 2 years of smooth sailing. 1 year later, David's company launched a completely redesigned product based on what they learned from the failure. It became their most successful product ever, generating $10 million in first-year revenue. But here's what David told me that really stuck. That failure didn't just improve my product, it fundamentally changed who I am as a leader. I stopped fearing obstacles and started seeing them as the curriculum for what I needed to learn next. That's amor fati in action. Now, let's talk about something that most business advice ignores: ethics. Not compliance, not legal requirements, real ethics. The Stoics believed that true leadership isn't about maximizing profit or personal success. It's about living virtuously and contributing to the common good. Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher and advisor to emperors, wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that he existed for the benefit of others, that his leadership role was service, not privilege. And here's the modern connection that's going to challenge you. In today's business world, we've been trained to believe that the only responsibility of a company is to maximize shareholder value. That's it. Make money. Growth at all costs. Disrupt or die. But look at what this philosophy has created. Companies that destroy trust for short-term gains. Leaders who burn out their teams. Environmental destruction.
communities hollowed out by corporations that extract value and give nothing back, a crisis of meaning where even successful entrepreneurs feel empty. Rachel Kim built a successful e-commerce company selling health supplements. Revenue was growing 300% year over year. Investors were excited. Everything looked perfect. Then she discovered something disturbing. Her manufacturer, trying to cut costs, had started using lower quality ingredients that technically met regulations but weren't what her customers believed they were buying. Her first instinct was to look the other way. Nobody had gotten sick. It was technically legal. Switching manufacturers would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and delay shipments. Her investors would be furious. Competitors weren't being this rigorous. Why should she? But Rachel had been reading Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. One passage kept echoing in her mind. If it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it. Simple, clear, uncompromising. So Rachel made the hardest decision of her career. She halted all production. She informed every customer about the issue with complete transparency. She refunded thousands of orders. She found a new manufacturer at higher cost. She took a $500,000 hit to revenue. Her investors were livid. Her team was terrified. Industry observers said she was committing business suicide. But here's what actually happened. Her radical transparency went viral. Customers who had never heard of her company became loyal advocates. Media covered her story as an example of ethical leadership in an industry plagued by deception. Other entrepreneurs reached out wanting to work with someone with real integrity. Within 6 months, her revenue had not just recovered, it doubled. But more importantly, Rachel built a company culture where people were proud of where they worked. Employee retention became the highest in her industry, and she could sleep at night. That's the Stoic principle of sympatheia, recognizing that we're all interconnected, that your gain doesn't have to come from someone else's loss, that true leadership means caring about the impact of your decisions on everyone involved. All right, so you're probably thinking, this all sounds amazing in theory, but how do I actually implement this when I have 50 fires to put out tomorrow morning? Great question, because philosophy without practice is just nice ideas. Marcus Aurelius didn't theorize about Stoicism, he lived it daily while running an empire. Here's how you can start living these principles tomorrow. Before you check your phone, before you dive into emails, spend 10 minutes doing what Marcus Aurelius did every morning. Set your intentions. Ask yourself, what challenges might I face today? What virtues do I want to embody today? Wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. What's within my control today, and what do I need to let go of? This isn't meditation for the sake of feeling zen. This is mental preparation for battle. You're programming your mind with the right operating system before the chaos hits. At the end of each day, Marcus Aurelius would journal, reviewing his actions and decisions. He'd ask, where did I fail to live according to my values today? Where did I waste energy on things outside my control? What did I learn? How can I be better tomorrow? This practice does something powerful. It turns every experience, good or bad, into data for improvement. Nothing is wasted. Every mistake becomes a lesson. Here's the most practical tool you'll ever learn. When something triggers you, an angry email, a disappointing result, a challenging conversation, practice the Stoic pause. Before you react, ask yourself, is this within my control? What would the wise version of me do right now? Will this matter in 5 years? This simple pause, just 3 seconds, is the difference between reactive leadership that creates more problems and responsive leadership that solves them. Remember at the beginning when I said I'd reveal something counterintuitive that most leadership experts won't tell you? Here it is. The greatest leaders aren't the ones who have it all figured out. They're not the ones who never struggle or doubt. They're not invulnerable superhumans. The greatest leaders are the ones who struggle just like everyone else,
but have trained themselves to respond differently to that struggle. Marcus Aurelius was anxious, he was tired, he doubted himself, he made mistakes. We know this because we have his private journal, Meditations. He wasn't writing it for publication. He was writing it to remind himself of his principles because he kept forgetting them. That's the secret. Even the most stoic leader needs constant practice, constant reminders, constant recommitment to their values. You're not supposed to master this overnight. You're not supposed to never feel stressed or uncertain. You're supposed to build practices that help you return to your principles when you lose your way, which you will, repeatedly. Let me leave you with one final story. Michael Harrison built a consulting firm over 15 years. It grew slowly, much slower than his peers who took venture capital and scaled aggressively. He watched competitors reach $50 million in revenue while he was still at $8 million. He endured mockery from people who said he was thinking too small. He had moments of deep doubt, wondering if he was wasting his potential. But Michael operated from Stoic principles. He refused to compromise his values for faster growth. He built a sustainable company culture, not a pressure cooker. He focused on what he could control, the quality of his work and the integrity of his relationships. He practiced amor fati, trusting that his slower path was actually the right path. Then something interesting happened. His fast-growing competitors started imploding. Toxic cultures led to mass exodus of talent. Aggressive tactics destroyed client relationships. Several companies collapsed entirely. Meanwhile, Michael's company kept growing steadily, compounding year after year. His employee retention was 95%. His client relationships lasted decades. His reputation was impeccable. Today, at age 52, Michael runs a $40 million firm that's profitable, sustainable, and aligned with his values. But more importantly, he loves his life. He has strong relationships, he sleeps well, he's healthy, he's proud of what he's built. He told me recently, "The Stoics taught me that success isn't about getting everything you want as fast as possible. It's about wanting what you have, being who you are, and contributing something meaningful. Everything else is just noise." So, here's the moral lesson I want to leave you with. Leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's not about never facing obstacles. It's not about being the strongest or smartest person in the room. Leadership is about who you become in response to adversity. It's about the character you build through repeated practice of your principles. It's about focusing your limited energy on what you can actually control and letting go of everything else. Marcus Aurelius led through plague, war, and betrayal. You're leading through market uncertainty, competitive pressure, and constant change. The circumstances are different, but the principles are timeless. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be intentional. You don't need to eliminate struggle. You need to respond to struggle with wisdom, courage, justice, and self-control. The ancient Stoics gave us a framework that has survived 2,000 years because it works. Not just in theory, not just in philosophy, in the messy reality of leadership, when everything is going wrong and you need to make decisions that matter. So, tomorrow morning, before you open your laptop, ask yourself, what's within my control today? What virtues do I want to embody? How can I turn obstacles into opportunities? Do this daily. Do this when it's hard. Do this especially when you don't feel like it. Because that's how you become not just a successful leader, but a stoic leader, someone whose character, integrity, and wisdom matter more than temporary wins or losses. And if Marcus Aurelius could do it while running an empire in crisis, you can do it too. Now, go lead like your principles matter more than your profits, because they do.